I'll do it. I'll record. You want to? Well, it's okay. I think we'll be okay. So, I want to make sure that we all. It's week 5 in class, and week 6 we have a quiz. So in the live class, we're going to have a fun activity related to roles and norms, and I will share it with you on the online classroom too. It's just a fun little activity so that you could see what role you put as a priority in your life. And norms, why do they exist? Types of work teams. So this is what I'm looking for that answer actually. So the types are advice, production, project, and action. And then also I'm going to want examples of like action, that could be a sports team or police, and advice, like a committee, production, project. Be expected to say the types of teams and then examples of them. And then I think I might even be asking, what have you participated in? What type of team? Intergroup conflict. We're going to cover that in class. But what I'm looking for is I'm not looking for contact hypothesis. Contact hypothesis was what sociologists thought would work to reduce intergroup conflict, but there's more to it than that because there's been more research since saying, hey, just have people hang out together and then they'll like each other. They won't fight as much, but that's not the case. We've come to the next level of knowing stuff. So to minimize conflict in a group, we want to nip things in the bud. Like if there's negative gossip, kind of neutralize that and be positive, be compassionate. This is where we talk about emotional intelligence. So if there's a conflict in a group, the higher the emotional intelligence of group members, probably the less the conflict there's going to be. Encourage working relationships and personal friendships. And then for group cohesion, have activities. Conduct team building to reduce. And team building is when, and it's tough because people, if the leader is not facilitating, that conflict can increase. So it's a matter of the leader having the emotional intelligence as well. And then if you're in a situation where the leader doesn't, then you know about emotional intelligence and you can step up to the plate and kind of improve conditions in a group because you guys have that tool. Work to eliminate specific negative interactions. So I'm trying to think of an example. We had intergroup conflict when some directors wanted to, they came to the statisticians and they were like, well, we kind of want you to delete that data. I'll probably be talking about this more in my ethics class. But in this case, somebody I know avoided that by actually resigning. They were like, I don't want to deal with another year of the summit, it was called the summit, and the directors coming and all of them then it was just like a lot of conflict because it's like, here is what we statistically see, here are the reports, and that was on ethical grounds, right? And then we agreed that we would delete those data points. Like, I guess it's different when it's intergroup, but we're in the same department, but then it's different when it's your peers versus like a manager. So with your peers, you guys can agree, you studied the statistics, you're on the same page. But then when you have leadership, yeah, that therein lies the people leave bad managers, not companies. So therein lies that, because as I'm recognizing the source of conflict is ethical. Like if it's ethical, it's easier to deal with when it's your peers rather than a superior. So I'm kind of that's role. Then that leads into role conflict, because your role as a status. So we're rewinding now to roles. So if your role is a scientist, statistician, you know numbers, you know math, and your role is to report that, but then your management has a work team that's an advice team, and they come together, managers come together as a committee, and they agree that they want to delete these data points. It's a pretty like intricate woven drama story. I actually experienced this firsthand, because we had a gentleman who was on point with his numbers, and he really did resign like before this situation happened. So in that case, in an organization, you want to think, if you're the CEO and you're losing talented people because there's unethical things going on, how do you tell a CEO? How do you tell leadership? How do you, one is bringing it to their attention through lawsuits if something was done illegally, but sometimes things are unethical but legal. So you have a conflict of role where you're a scientist and you know the numbers and you know the math, and then you also have a role as an employee and you have to listen to what your manager or director says. But if what your manager and director is saying goes against your role of what you know about numbers, then you have role conflict. Norms exist, it's like for the set of behaviors, and we kind of do want to have norms so that people know how to, well, we're social. So, I mean, if we didn't have norms on the road, we'd be crashing everywhere. But there's norms in organizations too. And I guess it's not cool when directors who are not math savvy or statistics savvy come together and vote in their group team to remove data points. That's just, I guess, one of my pain bodies. One of the things that irks me and bothers me about organizations and sometimes the politics within organizations. And as I grow my organization, I have to stay on top of the people who I'm working with and like kind of know who's playing what political game. Intergroup conflict, escalation of commitment. So this one right here, this is where, say the person who I was just talking about, escalation of commitment, the person I was just talking about who resigned before he knew all the directors were going to come from all over the globe, and he already knew that he was going to have this big knot, and he resigned right before that. Escalation of commitment would have been him not resigning, him just staying there and doing the same old thing that year. And escalation of commitment in an organization, I relate it to sunk cost cognitive bias. So we're going to look at both. It's when you're investing time and money in something that's just failing. And so if this guy continued to work there, like he would be the conflict, like I think he would probably feel losses for himself because he's going against what his scientist mathematician is saying, and he's doing what it's failing. It's like, even though he's getting paid to do that job, it's unhappiness. And so from a personal like fulfillment perspective, his sunk cost would have been, he would have not been happy lying at work about numbers, but he would have stayed because of escalation of commitment or the sunk cost. It's a fallacy / a cognitive bias. And I linked that in class already, that video. I had an older video, cognitive bias video about sunk cost. So therein lies kind of getting an understanding. And I worked with this person in production and project. And I guess seeing the big picture, it's how do we as scientists now bring this information to CEOs and are like, look, you have situations where you're losing great people and you have this political thing going on. How do you get in and know without being sued? Like without it having to result in a lawsuit? Or what about all this other fluffy stuff that's, it's unethical, it's legal, but unethical. So, I think that's all we need to cover right now. I kind of drift. But page 376 of your textbook is where the recommended actions are to reduce intergroup conflict. And then for roles in your book, it's on page 279. And then the fun activity that we're going to do for norms in class is the Dalai Lama's personality test. So if you are not in class, you're not going to do it. But if you're watching this and you want to do it, that's what we're going to do. Okay, happy today, happy every day. That's right.